Hello and welcome back to the spooky adjacent theme that we have going on this month, where I have come back with more redesigning my childhood characters but without the wheel of random aesthetics. We are going back to the very start of things, both in terms of this channel and this giant map on the back of which I drew all of these characters as a young budding world builder. My very first video on this channel was redrawing a werewolf girl named Wisteria, and we are here to draw even more werewolf girls, specifically two characters that are probably some of my oldest design characters in the collection. For this first design, I am redesigning a character named Rhiannah, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but she is a werewolf. I'm pretty sure I talked about this before with the monster section of my childhood world building, but they're not technically monsters in like the mythological sense. They haven't been bitten by another creature, they weren't willed into existence like this. They're monsters more in an X-Men sense. Being in this area exposes them to some kind of natural mutation. They all have developed abilities or features that make them have the appearance and skills of some of your more traditional spooky monsters. But I was super into fantasy creature designs as a kid, and also deeply interested in science and specifically genetics. And look at me now, still having very similar interests. The primary problem that these characters were facing was that these mutations were getting out of control. It would change their moods, make them really prone to anger, it would affect their ability to work, and make it super difficult to plan for the future. It would ruin relationships, jobs, and the werewolves were at the center of pushing scientific research that would help make all of their symptoms more controlled. And I feel like that specific detail is very interesting, that as a child I thought it was important that they get to keep their unique features and abilities, but they had resources available to them to make navigating daily life easier and more manageable. Rhiannah specifically was sort of a main character in this whole plot. While she wasn't the scientist who made the groundbreaking technological advancements that allowed the citizens to gain control over their abilities, she was the adventurer who risked her life finding rare secret medication ingredients or fuel power crystals or whatever missing component was needed to solve the equation. Interestingly enough, Rhiannah was one of the few characters that also got additional lore. Not only did she have a full adventuring character arc, she was one of the rare characters that I made that ended up getting married, and even rarer, she had kids and a family. Most of the characters I made were sort of freestanding individuals with not much backstory and not much plot beyond what adventure they went on in the moment, but Rhiannah is a very unique exception. In fact, she ends up getting married to a character that I already redrew. His name is Rick. He didn't get his own video on the channel because I forgot to press record for 90% of his drawing. And also he looks just so normal, very modern, and Rhiannah is sort of unplaceable in terms of time and space and fantasy. I think I need to redraw him in a clothing style that suits her a little better. Speaking of style, I didn't want to do just a complete upheaval of Rhiannah's design. I wanted to have the same vibe, just in my current preferences and drawing capabilities, maybe with a fantasy twist. So I kept the shorter hair and left the white patch in her hair. I just extended it to also affect her eyebrow and her eye to have a more dramatic visual effect. For one, I am a big sucker for the white shock of hair in any character design, which clearly I've always been, if Rhiannah is testament to anything, but I also thought it would be a cool design to incorporate into her wolf form, just to have that patch of white over the left side of her face. I just think it's neat. For her clothing, I wanted to keep that blue-green color as part of the new style, but I wanted her to have a more hunter-huntress vibe. She is equipped for an adventure, but like in an overly dramatic kind of way. I did momentarily forget that when it came to redrawing the monsters, most of them I've redrawn in fairly modern, non-fantasy clothing, but I mean, she has a ribbed turtleneck cropped halter top with a star cut out. That sort of thing could never be achieved in medieval fantasy. Actually, I'm not convinced that it would hold up structurally very well in real life either, but it's my drawing. I'll do what I want. My biggest regret for this character design is not making her more obviously hairy. I didn't really do that for either character in this video, but Rhiannah is showing more skin than the other character I draw, so I'm specifically peeved at myself for her. I think that it makes a lot of sense that werewolf characters should have a lot of body hair even in their humanoid forms, but therein lies the issue. I wasn't thinking very much about what she should look like besides just her outfit. Oftentimes when I draw a piece, there is something specific that I want to work on, and that will distract me from the majority of other things in in the drawing. I've actually started making a habit of saving progress sketches so I don't forget about the small accessories when rendering things. Unfortunately, that's something that happens a lot when I get lost in the sauce. For this drawing, the sauce in question was getting more color into skin tones. I think I'm pretty okay at like rosy pink skin, getting shadows in, but it's the green and the blue undertones that appear in skin that I have a really hard time with. And you're like, wait a minute, wasn't it just a couple of weeks ago that you were really focused on learning how gradient maps work and getting values in? How's it possible that you have learned everything that you need to learn about that? It's not possible. It's just that I'm built wrong. My brain no longer finds gradient maps to be a challenge that is both moderately difficult yet still enjoyable. So I had to switch things up a little to trick myself into still trying to progress my art skills. Don't worry, I haven't abandoned gradient maps entirely. We just had a moment where we remembered how much we loved the art from Arcane and Toothy Painty rendering styles, and we got a little sidetracked. Also, since Painty styles are a little more loose and dynamic, it was super nice for rendering the fur in her wolf form. Furry, hairy creatures ain't exactly my forte, and I ain't exactly find it enjoyable to make repetitive motions for a long period of time to indicate many strands of hair. I know it's not necessary at all to draw every single strand of hair when rendering it. It's just a really easy thing that I get fixated on, and then I end up spending a lot of time making one section look nice, and then by comparison everything else looks a little under-rendered. That's probably the next art technique that I should focus on, not overworking parts of my drawing, because that is a problem in both this and my other drawing. But on that note, here we have our first character drawing of the video, Rhiannah and her wolf form. I think it's a fun design. Despite my complaints about drawing fur, I actually did kind of enjoy drawing the wolf. Even though her fantasy outfit makes next to no sense, me and my inner child think it's neat, and really at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, this color scheme as a whole for character designs is very nice. I should draw more characters in this dark, warm brown with this jewel-toned, cool green color. But enough of Rhiannah. Now we are drawing our second werewolf of the video. And before I introduce her, can you learn to believe that I actually was gonna draw like 3 more werewolves for this video? And all 3 of the werewolves that I have left are men. Werewolf men. That would have put me into the pits of despair. Especially since I'm drawing human and werewolf forms, that would have been 5 human designs, mostly men, and 5 wolf designs. That's 10 designs. Sometimes I have to remind myself that art fight is not for like another 9+ months. We don't have to live like that, girl. Nobody's forcing me to draw 1,000 werewolves in just a couple days. But back to the character at hand. This is Wilma. I'm not sure why I went with the name Wilma. Just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with the name. I know it was a letter association thing. Werewolf and Wilma both start with W. But what about Wendy or Willow or something? Those just seem like more likely names for a 12-year-old to come up with, you know? But then again, it's not like Rhiannah qualified for the naming convention anyways, so it wasn't like I had to pick a name that started with W. I don't even think I knew anyone in real life named Wilma at that time. It just feels very out of left field. Maybe I was watching Flintstones at my grandma's house or something when I was drawing this character. But at any rate, this is Wilma. Wilma is Rhiannah's closest friend. I recall that they went on a lot of adventures together, and she eventually becomes a sort of aunt figure for Rhiannah's kids later down the line, but I don't remember if she was related to Rhiannah in any way. Like maybe she was a sister, or maybe more distant, maybe like a cousin, or maybe she was just close enough of a friend and is present enough in Rhiannah's life that the kids kind of see her as an aunt. I imagine Wilma to be fairly different from Rhiannah. Rhiannah was very much the leader, and Wilma was more wary and less decisive, but she was still willing to come along on any journey that Rhiannah set for her, and I wanted that to reflect in her design. So she's wearing a dress instead of pants because that's more practical, as if Rhiannah's outfit is any more practical for adventuring. Wilma's a little more dainty, frail looking. She's wearing white gloves. I gave her a more tense, maybe even pensive expression. Her hands are anxiously held in front of her, and she doesn't have the same confidence in her pose that Rhiannah does. But I wanted her werewolf to be vicious. I think that makes for a really strong motivator for Rhiannah to want to find a way to control the strength of the mutation. I mean, of course, Rhiannah will do what she must to save the town, but to save Wilma specifically from tearing herself apart for fear of her altered mutant self, that's a much stronger, more personal motivation. Also, just to be clear, that's not something that child me thought of. I am actively adding my own lore lore to my own lore, extended lore, if you will. As much as I like the big strong ladies to be big and strong, I do have a soft spot for an anxious, self-loathing, frail character who turns into an overpowered colossal monster. So let's compare Wilma to her original design. Like the last drawing, I tried to keep things kind of consistent in terms of color palette, vibes, and hair, I guess. I gave Wilma more defined curls, and I still wanted her to have a red dress with fun layers. Sure, her new dress is a little less asymmetrical, Hot Topic-esque, but I think it still suits her. It has a similar flowy, layered, romantic vibe about it. I guess if you can extrapolate that from the original drawing. I will say that especially with the decision to give her these pink red eyes and different longer ears, she is reading very vampire. But that's a design flaw I'm willing to live with. I don't remember if I said this before in a video, but one detail that I think is so funny for no reason is that when I was designing these characters originally as like a 12-year-old, I made sure all the monster characters had a favorite color listed, and all the werewolves' favorite colors were black and white. Because at the time, I believe the dogs were completely colorblind, not able to see any color at all, so I decided that none of the werewolves had favorite colors because they couldn't see colors. Even in their human forms, they were colorblind, which is just such an oddly specific detail for little me to have put in. And just so I'm not spreading misinformation on the internet, dogs can see some colors, and also folks that are colorblind can have favorite colors. Look, y'all, I was 12. I was operating on a very small window of worldview, okay? Back to the drawing, I struggled with Wilma's werewolf version quite a bit. I picked a sort of strange pose and expression, and I'm still not quite sure that I'm happy with how it turned out, but I do think it definitely evokes a sense of intense emotion and anger, which is all that I was going for. I think I overworked the head and face area. I should have just left it alone instead of going back to add more fur and wrinkles. That being said, I do really like the use of the textured hatching brush. I think that came out super nice and exactly how I was hoping that it would. I will confess, I did get lazy and I did not want to figure out what wolf legs look like from the back, so I added a bunch of gradients and made her tail so fluffy. Just so fluffy. You can't see legs, you can't see claws, nothing like that really. Does she have legs at all? I guess we'll never know. But that is the end of our second and final drawing of this video, Wilma and her werewolf form. I like Wilma's human facial expression and the redness under her eyes a lot. It's calm, poised, contemplative, but there is an intensity hidden in there. My favorite thing about the drawing is probably the hatching brush texture. I think that was a very good decision, and hopefully that's something that I remember to use more in the future. Also, yes, I did flip the composition around after I turned the camera off. I just thought compositionally she would look better with Rhiannah if she was facing the other direction, and I mean, look at them, look at these girls. Also, putting them side by side made me realize that Rhiannah's werewolf is kinda gigantic, but I'm into it. I like the big stalking hunter wolf juxtaposed with the more impulsive, vicious, fast wolf. It just makes sense. But with that, we have one more week of it being socially acceptable for me to have my skeleton bed pillow out in the open on my couch. Let's be honest, it's gonna stay there longer than 1 week because I'm too busy fighting the urge to make an entirely new costume under a very tight deadline for no reason. If next week's video is a sewing video, you all should know it's because I am weak-willed and sleep deprived. So tune in next time to see if I make healthy decisions for myself or if I don't, because who knows? Not me.